Hey guys, this is Sean Fairchild for Bartolini Artist Soundbites, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about this bass, these pickups, and my new album, Ear Goggle Fodder. So I produce music under the name Combinator. You can hear it on all streaming platforms, and obviously what I was just doing there in the intro, that's really non-traditional bass playing. And what helps me a lot to do that sort of thing is, well, really non-traditional instruments and non-traditional gear. And Bartolini and this MTD bass really kind of work together beautifully to facilitate what I do, because I've got this, obviously it's a weird technique. I use a lot of flamenco stuff. I do normal bass playing also, but what's going on is, well, first of all, the bass. Let's talk about the platform real quick. So this is a wonderful MTD 635-24 6-string bass, and it's highly customized. So I'm really lucky to enjoy a great working partnership with Mike and Dan from MTD, and they did a number of custom options for me on this bass that include this really cool magnetic ramp that I can remove easily, and a different control layout for me. All my favorite wood. So this is a burled maple top, ash back, and then we've got an ash and wenge composite neck. It's a fantastic instrument, but one of the things that's not custom on it is the stock USA Bartolini pickups that they put in these instruments, which are actually a big part of the sound that I'm able to get. So one really notable thing about these pickups is that, in my mind, they kind of work almost like an alembic or wall sort of system pickup. They're really low wound, they're low impedance, which allows them to have a really flat frequency spectrum, frequency response, and basically makes it so that they don't have a big peak lower in the frequency response, as a lot of traditional pickups would. So it allows you to use an EQ. They really work in concert nicely with an onboard preamp to sculpt the overall tone you want. So you can put in that resonant peak wherever you like. In fact, I'd actually really like to hear them with a filter-based preamp like an alembic. But they're great, so they give me enough range on the high end and the low end without too much coloring in between of their own, that allows somebody like me to really kind of define how I want them to sound, define the overall envelope that they have. So it helps a lot. I can get this really, this great bright sound that I was using in that intro. But they're very easily made much more traditional sounding. So really cool pickups. I like them a lot. So these pickups are proprietary for MTD USA models. Bartolini makes them just for MTD. However, they also made me a set of custom pickups that I use a lot, and I did use on my album Ear Goggle Fodder. And those are the M56 CBJD3 pickups. So they're essentially a split coil, inline, jazz bass-ish sort of design in these M5 shaped shells right here. With each coil towards the rear of the pickup. So ordinarily in a jazz bass sort of scenario, the coil would be towards the front of the pickup in the neck position, but I like it a little bit more rearward for a little bit more kind of modern aggressiveness. Alright, so on this preamp I have a master volume, and that's a traditional sort of master volume. And one thing I should mention before I go further about the way that these pickups work is that due to their low wound nature, due to their low impedance, they each require a buffer. So there's a stereo buffer system. So these pickups are each going into their own buffer. And before they reach that buffer, they're actually they're actually going to a passive tone, and it's a stereo passive tone. So it's able to maintain the isolated signal path. So that's right here, and it's got that great, real, true passive tone response that everybody seems to know and love. So after that, the signal gets summed, and we can either go out directly passive, or we can stay active. And I've got treble right here. It's very bright, very fast. Or I can actually pull that up for a 10K boost. And without it, finally, I have a mid-range control here that I can boost or cut, and it's a sweepable mid-range, so very cool. In fact, I actually kind of like to use this sometimes when I'm playing long held chords or long notes. It's kind of like a wah sort of effect. Sound. Alright, so a little bit about Combinator. That's my artist name. It's basically, the concept was originally and remains to be kind of a meat grinder for the world's great genres and styles and vibes of music that are not often heard back to back or not often mixed with each other. Sort of, I don't really like the word fusion because I don't like what it evokes in a lot of people's minds, but it sort of is fusion in a true sense of the word. But I'm primarily influenced by rock, progressive elements, hip hop, drum and bass, kind of a neo-soul vibe. So that's kind of the idea behind Combinator. And this bass is kind of made to celebrate and work with all the new material on this album. As you can see, if you look at the album cover, it's all the color scheme is all matching. We've got all that worked out. But it's really it was really made this year as a custom expression of what I needed to get these songs out in person, like in reality, and it just works beautifully for it. Alright, so the new album is called Ear Goggle Fodder. Yeah, it's a weirdo name, but it's basically it's stuff for your headphones, meant to be listened to with big old cans, or preferably really loud speakers. But it was kind of born out of a lot of the feelings from last year, from 2020. It's a time when I would have been playing live a lot with various groups. And wasn't. So all this time on my hands, I guess all of us were in that boat. It was, I think that my feelings about the year are reflected in the album. It's a darker, more melancholy sort of sound than previous releases. The previous album was called All Sound. Definitely more of a funk and sort of power trio vibe. And on this release, I only had other musicians playing with me on a couple of the tracks. I think 3 tracks, and the majority of it was just all the material that I produced on bass, vocals, and drum programming. I also have to give a shout out to Philip Coleman, God Cloud. He did some awesome percussion stuff with me. He's really kind of a co-conspirator on this album. But the album has 10 tracks. It's 9 new tracks plus 1 that's kind of a classic that's been revisited. And you can hear it on Spotify, on Xbox, on Google Play, on Apple Music, all of the services. It's everywhere. You can't get away from it. So Combinator ear goggle fodder, look for it today. And if you would like to support me and support independent artists and weirdo bass players who do weird stuff with basses with too many strings, go to combinator.bandcamp.com and you can purchase the album there. And you can find me at SeanFairchild.com. Social media at Sean on Bass. So in addition to being lucky enough to work with a brand like MTD for this world-class instrument, and it's actually one of the several customs that they built for me. I'm really very lucky, being not a very well-known player, to have relationships with incredible companies like GHS Strings, which I use their super steels, and it's a really important part of my sound and what you hear on the record. As well as Tsunami Cables, Gensler Amplification. I go way back with Jeff Gensler and Gensbands, his previous company. And that stuff that I use, it's very full range and really does a lot to kind of execute what I'm trying to get across in a live context. Access Bags and Cases, Sonic Nuance Electronics, Ted Burmis, Bartolini, of course. I think I've named everybody. I hope so. Alright, thanks again for joining me. My name is Sean Fairchild, aka Combinator. Thank you for watching this Bartolini Artist Soundbite, and stay tuned for the next in the series.